Hey there, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm Kylie Elizabeth, also known as the Virtuoso Educator. And today my special guest is Emily Metzler, who's coming from Colorado. Emily is a former educator, a teacher, second and fourth grade, and she focuses a lot on social emotional learning and self-regulation skills, as well as classroom management skills. So Emily did connect with me through our social media pages and decided to jump on our conversations so she can share her resources that she has for these topics, as well as just be an advocate for what is needed in the classroom. So I'm going to pull Emily in and we'll get going on our conversation. All right.
Hi.
Hey Emily, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to have you on, and thank you for connecting with me. And I'm really excited for our conversation today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just let you do a brief intro of yourself, and tell us a little bit about your educational background, and share whatever you'd like, and then we'll get going into our conversation.
All right. Well, I'm originally from Western New York, born and raised south of Buffalo, and I always wanted to work with kids. I used to think it was my calling to be like a counselor or a psychologist. And then I realized science and math are not my thing when I went into college. And my best friend was like, well, just teach. And I was like, oh my stars, that fixes all the problems I was having. And so I became an elementary teacher. After I graduated, I moved south to North Carolina and I taught second grade there for 3 years. Definitely eye-opening. I was kind of on my own from the beginning. We had a teacher who was on maternity leave the first half of the year, and the second half of the year, the other teacher in the grade left and retired early. So it was just kind of me in my classroom figuring it out. And I honestly, we had no curriculum. I got to create everything, and it was so much fun. I think my first 3 years were like my favorite.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And from there, I moved to Nebraska and I taught in the largest school in the district. There were 6 other teammates on the second grade team there, and I was there for another 3 years. And it was a very different experience. They were very strict on curriculum. You have to be on the same place with each other teacher in the grade level in the district. So it was a very eye-opening experience going from something so like free to something so rigid. But I learned a lot. I learned how to kind of play within those rules and expectations and things. And then after 3 years there, I moved to Colorado and I taught for almost 4 years, did fourth grade, taught through the pandemic. It was a mess, but we made it through. And I stepped away from the classroom because I had a baby in 2022. And it is very hard to be an infant, new mom, trying to teach at the same time, especially when you're just tired all the time. Like I knew tired before I had a kid, and then I had a kid. I don't know how parents work and teacher parents go to work every day because it's very challenging. So I stepped away from the classroom and I decided that I was tired of hearing teachers ask for help and not get the right kind of help. They're asking for classroom management support and how to connect with kids and build that classroom community in a way where it supports positive behaviors in the classroom and positive behavior management overall. And so I was like, well, I've been doing this for years. This is what I was the best at. Like some people are really good in science. Some are really good in math. I was really good at connecting with my students and focusing on, the social emotional side of it. And so that's where Not Your Ordinary Teacher came from. And I'm now creating digital courses that give teachers training in social emotional learning as a means to support classroom management.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. So, sorry, I had to write some down. I'm taking notes too as we go. So, I'm sorry. So that's great. And you really just touched on a lot of like key things that, a lot of people don't realize, especially when you have co-teachers and you're all having to be on that same plan, that is something that is very hard. But like you said, everybody kind of gets their task and what their strengths are. And so did you get the opportunity in your roles when you were co-teaching with the other grades, did you get the opportunity to really utilize your social emotional learning skills or your strategies, or did you have to like do that after you stopped teaching?
I kind of had to sneak it in, honestly. It became something where, like, you know how they say, shut your door and do what's best for kids.
Oh,
That's
yes.
essentially what ended up having to happen. Not in every place and not every year, but a lot of the time it was like, we don't have time to slow down to address these issues. So I
Right.
just kind of was like, well, this is worth it for me. I know that this is going to be more beneficial in the long run to address and
Right.
take care of and take my time here. So
Right.
it's not always a welcome thing. And there's a lot of things I don't think teachers understand that you can do within just conversations with students and just within the way you approach your procedures and routines that are daily
Yes.
that can support students' social and emotional development.
Exactly. And that's that even just the basic conversation, with the students, that's a big one. We call it your daily check-ins. If your carpet time, especially if you have the little ones in the morning,
Yep.
right, you're kind of sitting down and feeling out their emotions and kind of doing that emotion check with them and using the lovely, smile sheets or something so they can indicate, to you how they're feeling, and which obviously starts off the day pretty good. So I don't want to get us out of order. We're not really in order, but I don't want to jump around too much for myself.
Yeah.
But I definitely so I want to kind of backtrack to your name really quick. So you call yourself not your ordinary teacher, and so the word ordinary, right? I think everybody can look at that different. I just want to know, for you, why do you name yourself that?
I feel like I've always I've never just settled for how it was in the classroom. I always wanted to kind of push back and challenge and find ways that I could be better, or we could improve the curriculum, or, we could make sure we're touching on things that I felt really mattered, like just students' emotions and things like that. And so I've always kind of been on my own sharing these things, talking about all the books I'm reading and things like that. And people, I feel like, are like, okay, Emily, just like sit down for a minute. But I couldn't, because I knew it was best for students. And so I wanted to be my best. And so because of that, I've always felt kind of, out of the ordinary. And so when I was trying to figure out how I wanted to come across to other teachers, not your ordinary teacher, we focus on things that aren't necessarily like academic specific, but will 100% support academic success going forward.
Awesome. Yeah. And yes, thank you for sharing that. So those, again, I want to make sure, as for any of my guests online, I want to show that Emily does have her Instagram up, Not Your Ordinary Teacher. So be sure to check it out. She does give some very good ideas in here. And then, I've definitely watched a lot of the videos that you post, and, you can definitely tell that you're very passionate about the work that you're doing within social emotional learning and how to give those skills to teachers directly. And I really like that you shared, I believe somewhere with me, and online, that you shared that you wanted to basically cut out the admin, right? You want to cut the admin out so you can give that direct support to the teachers, because sometimes in the world of education, a lot of teachers are not getting that directly from their admin team, or for various reasons. So what has been your experience so far with working with teachers in more of, I guess, a consulting capacity, if that's what you will call it, and kind of giving some ideas to how to work with classroom management or social emotional learning?
I feel that teachers are asking for help. I'm seeing it, and it's not just when I was in the classroom listening to my peers and my coworkers. It goes so much farther than that. If you look on any teacher groups on Facebook, they're asking for help. They're sharing similar stories, and I wanted to help. And for years
Yeah.
I was asking my admin, I was like, hey, I know how to help here. I know how to set this up. Help give me a platform. I can talk to our teachers. And it never happened. We had to prepare for testing, and all these other priorities ended up taking over. So I got mad, honestly. And I was like,
Right.
I'm going to cut out the middleman. I want teachers to feel successful, and I want them to feel
Yeah.
successful without having to wait for somebody to help them. And so that's what I'm really going for. And it's my posts that get the most interaction are the ones that are really relatable, where I talk about students who have become violent or have become so disruptive that learning isn't happening, and the number of teachers that are experiencing the same thing, K-12 all over. It's heartbreaking, and I want to do something to
It
make
really is.
that better. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I've seen a lot too, and there's some quite disturbing ones, depending on the grade level. And it's just, I say this all the time, it's just such an interesting time in education. And again, as you know, it's like nothing new. I just feel again that it's just more in our face, and because of technology, that so many people can now speak on what is actually happening. And with the behavior, again, it's a lot of things, right? It's the classroom management, it is the teacher, it is the self-regulation of both the teacher as the adult and the student as the child. Then you have your parents involved or family members that are taking care of those students, and then your admin, right? So it's like, it's not a one person's issue, it is kind of a collective issue. So then it's like, well, where do we start? So me and you were talking about, at what point if you're you're getting a formal education to be a teacher, and where in our education there are we learning about social emotional learning techniques, or where should it be implemented, and how soon should we learn those practices before we're put into a classroom with a bunch of kids and we can't even manage ourselves, right? So my question or my thought is, where do you feel, or why do you believe that social emotional learning is just not strong in schools, and more classroom management, because it all ties together, but it is more of the classroom management techniques when working with students. Like, where do you feel that things are being missed, or just things are not being addressed?
Speaking on my own personal experience, when I was in college going and getting my own, going and get my degree, I got one course on classroom management. It was during my student teaching, and we met once a week, and there's nothing that stood out that I remembered. There was nothing I feel like I walked away with as successful as helpful. And I've made a point in the last couple of years to ask, well, where did you learn about classroom management? Like, did you have courses in your college? Because again, I'm coming from a completely different state than most of my peers. So I was just trying to figure out if I was a one-off and it was just happened to be my school, and it's not. It's college and teacher training programs all over don't prioritize that. And I'm not exactly sure why I don't have a solution for that, but that's something that is a huge red flag, and we need to start addressing when teachers start going on practicums or start experiencing time in the classroom. That's when classroom management support should be happening. But even after that, how many teachers in districts are never getting any kind of professional development or any kind of training in classroom management? It's always, well, this is what in elementary school, at least. It's always, well, let's have another PD day, 7 hours on a curriculum we've been teaching for 2 years. Let's continue with that, or let's talk about our state testing training and things like that. When all of the teachers are asking for support in classroom management, or I don't know if high school does PBIS.
Not in that manner. I can explain a little bit, but so the positive behavioral incentives.
So I've been a part of a PBIS school every year I've taught, And I've never
Okay.
once actually gotten a training in how to implement PBIS. And it's just like, we're a PBIS school. And it feels like they're saying, well, just keep being positive, use positive reinforcement. And it's not really a taught thing or something that you get trained in. It's just something you're told to do, which is an issue.
Right. Yeah. And so, again, yeah, that positive behavioral interventions and support is the PBIS. And so it is very, for those of you who don't know what that acronym is or what that looks like, it really is just a different, a positive reward system or such for students to have positive behavior. And there's a lot of pros and cons about the system and how that works, especially the pros is the whole staff that in a school that's utilizing, or a district that's utilizing that system, that they're effectively trained on it, they know how to use it. But a lot of people know it to be, if you're having a bad day, you're on the red today. If you're good, you're on the green. Or if your school gives out, like the little fake dollars or the money so that they can hold on to it. And at the end of the week, right, they get to go cash it in for a fun fidget toy or something. But that's a layer of PBIS. And there's so much more that goes into it where, through professional development, it is missed in our schools. And a lot of people don't like it. Like, I personally did not like it because it is not very effective, especially on our children with IEPs and our children that have emotional behavioral disorders, because a lot of those kids were left out on the reward at the end of the week because they were struggling through the week with their behavior and didn't get all of those incentives. And so I think that could be like a whole episode of conversation for us. But I definitely agree. When you're talking about when teachers receive their practicum, especially if you're doing formal education to be a teacher, that you really don't get your student teaching until the last year, right before you're about to start working, right? And I found that to be problematic too, because this is why I feel a lot of recruitment and retention efforts are struggling, is because they're not getting true exposure to the communities that they're going to work in. And then once they, graduate, they got their degree, they got their first job, they're in the school, and their mind's blown. I really was not prepared to work with this demographic of students or within this community, right? Unless you know where you're going to go. I feel like that lack of classroom management skills is an issue when they're not getting that training a lot sooner. So real quick, I'll say something, and I know sometimes I tend to talk too long, so I try to flip over to my question. But another kind of scenario is, letting, if they're in college and trying to and wanting to be a teacher, have them go early, have them try different settings of schools and observe and teach in different groups and different formats, right? Different, private versus charter, like exposure to multiple environments and working with multiple demographics of students is extremely important, because I feel that it gives people more of an opportunity to decide sooner is if this is something I can handle, right? Or not. And then you will avoid that turnover after year one. If a teacher's not making it, they're not lasting past year one. You usually have takes about a good 3 years, as statistics show, of keeping going, staying strong, getting used to the curriculum and all of those things, and your classroom management skills before you're really starting to be like an effective teacher and all of those things. So you mentioned professional development. Sorry, go ahead.
On that, what I find really interesting is that I was told it'll take 3 to 5 years to get your classroom management figured out. But why? Like, if we're losing what's worth of our teachers before they hit year 3, there's a connection here that we need to address. And I feel very strongly that it's a lot of it's related to classroom management and giving them the support that they deserve in those first few years.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and that's a good question. Why? Like, why does it take? Because I feel definitely if a person is understanding, and I think it does come back to the teacher or the adult themselves. And we're going to talk about this. I know that's one of our topics is like self-regulation, right? How can we manage ourselves to then manage a group of, especially if you're in elementary, to manage a group of little children.
Yeah.
But then even middle school, those of you that do
Nope.
middle school, bless you, because
Yeah. You're
it was like
amazing.
they want to be whiny and crybabies at the same time, and then adults at the same
Adult.
time. I'm like, oh, I can't do this.
No, thank
But high
you.
schools, like that was my jam. I loved teaching high school students. But high schoolers can challenge you like
Yeah.
daily because they think they're
Mhm.
adults and they think they know better and all of those things, right? But do you, as a person, know how to manage the intellect of that age group that you're working with, right? It's all so different.
Right.
And so you talked about PD, right? And when the student teachers are getting professional development around classroom management skills. And I remember having one when I was in my program. Same thing. I'm like, I don't really remember too much about it. You learn about the
Uh-huh.
theories, right? About Maslow hierarchy and
Yep.
all of those things, but you don't really get the I guess there's not really a way to get that hands-on experience to apply the skills that you learn unless
Mhm.
it's being done at the same time.
Yeah.
And then the question was, so you mentioned also how a lot of times that instead for PDs, it's focused on the curriculum and then on the standardized testing. Do you feel that schools tend to focus on that over the well-being and the social emotional supports and classroom management supports, just kind of in general?
Absolutely. And again, I've taught across the country and I've seen it consistently in every place I've been. Uh, I feel like if we just teach them and keep teaching and focusing on academics, I feel like society, the powers that be, however it is, believe that, well, if we just keep at it, it'll change when
Right.
we've seen that this isn't isn't helping. And there's been
Yes.
research out since 2004 when I was still in high school at that point. Like there's been research that says when you address and when you put a focus on social emotional learning, it immediately positively impacts academic success, not just for students, but like the school as a whole. It helps with the district. And the fact that we're now 20 years from just some of this research and we're still not making that connection. And I know there are places, there are states that are even saying like SEL is nope, like we're not doing that in schools. Like we're shooting ourselves in the foot a bit.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And it's crazy. Like you said, there's so much research that backs it. And again, I understand some of the sentiments I've heard in the past. Teachers aren't therapists, they shouldn't have to know, or counselors, they shouldn't have to, like, they're focused on the content, right? They're the experts of that. If you're doing English, if you're doing math, like, you are the experts on that, but not the experts on working with children. I think there's a fine line of if we're trying to compare SEL to counselors or therapists, it's very coinciding. They relate to each other, but I do feel that people do miss the mark because when it's more of a relatability skill, like how, and an empathy skill. Like, you have to be able to look at your students and even identify, some of those emotions that are happening with them, even without them saying it, right? And some of us as adults don't really have that emotional intelligence or intellect to kind of visually see that, right? But then it's important to use other social emotional skills and classroom management skills and techniques to kind of address that and build those relationships with those students. And to kind of piggyback off of that, we were also, the fact that social emotional learning is getting taken away from school, like you said, it is going to shoot ourselves in the foot, because if these kids are not regulated, if they're not feeling like they're heard, at
Mm-hmm.
any level, if they don't even relate well with you because we're just being so stubborn that we don't want to do what's right in front of our face that will help us, right? Because it could be an authoritative stance. It could be, I'm the adult, they need to respect me kind of
Mm-hmm.
attitude. And I do feel that very much hurts
Yes.
what we could do in schools. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
once those things are foundationally taken care of, then they're going to be naturally inclined to want to learn academic skills.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some other things that you've kind of noticed as you taught and traveled around different states, and maybe something that, you know, you saw positively that worked with management skills, or some things that you've done yourself?
I've learned that the foundation of building a classroom environment that is safe and welcoming, as well as building
Mhm.
relationships, like if you don't have either of those things, you are setting yourself up for a world of struggle as the year goes on, no matter, you know, where you are. I feel like those, if you can build a relationship, then you have a chance, even with the toughest students. And
Right.
if we can start there, everything else will be a bit easier. Getting them to complete work. Well, you know the
Right.
student, you know how to talk to that student. I feel like that's part of our responsibility as teachers,
Right.
is to make sure we can build relationships. But a lot of what I've noticed is that kids have the same feelings that we do. They have the same confusion around feelings that we do. They have the same struggles with certain people that we do, like where they're just little versions of us, but they don't know better. And
Right.
we hopefully sometimes know
Right.
better. Um, and so right now I'm focusing a lot on specifically self-awareness as I build this course out. And I mean, things like recognizing your strengths or recognizing your needs and getting comfortable enough to state both of
Right.
those, it is a learned trait, but it's also really vital um, to help students understand themselves, to know, like, yes, I have a need, I'm struggling here, but that doesn't define me. That's not all of me. I have so many good
Right.
things too, and it's something I can improve, kind of that growth mindset. And I
Right.
think kids just want to understand themselves and know that, like, this is the human experience. It's not always easy, you know, and to give them space to explore that and
Hmm.
practice. Because ultimately, if they can't regulate their emotions, they're not going to sit through a lesson. So it helps
Yeah.
us to be skilled in social emotional learning so that they can get the work done, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
absolutely. And I'm sorry, guys, I'm over here drawing. I'm trying to share my screen so you guys, for those who, again, are not like formally aware of all the topics that we're talking about. So this was a slide that, a post that you shared on your social media account on social emotional learning competencies. So that self-awareness, the self-management, social awareness, and we have the social management with your social skills, as well, self-management, as well as responsible decision making. So you're working right now on the self-management skills?
Self-awareness. So like the step
Self-awareness.
before. So
Okay.
they have to know emotions and understand and name their own emotions before we can get to that regulation piece, which is a
Right.
part of self-management.
Right. And would you say that any of these, obviously it could be a cyclical thing, but where primarily do you feel that these types of skills should be learned for our students? Like what age or what grade level?
I feel this should be a part of every grade level, honestly.
Hmm.
It definitely should be starting from the beginning. I mean, self-awareness. I am angry. Name it. Um, Being social awareness, like, hi, my name's Emily. Like, what's your
Hmm.
name? Like meeting people. Um, this is a part of your life, and
Right.
it will set you up for success, not just in school, but beyond.
Right.
You can, I feel you can go through and use each of these competencies and be teaching them in tandem and doing things
Right.
that support each one. But I do feel that if we don't have self-awareness as a base, it's hard because that's,
Yeah.
identifying strengths and needs. It is self-efficacy, which is belief in yourself, belief in the fact that you can do and succeed at things.
Right.
And things like mindfulness, being able to mindfully breathe and kind of control your breath and calm
Right.
yourself down.
Right. Yeah. All of that makes sense. And definitely at the the youngest age possible, even before they're in school. So parents,
Yeah.
like, these are techniques that you can use with even your toddlers, like talk to them.
Yes,
Kids know as much as you feed them, right? As
exactly.
much as you give into them. And we know as humans, everything is a learned behavior. It's a learned trait. You are
Mm-hmm.
mimicking your environment, or the things that you enjoy. And so even that foundational skill of being self-aware, even for my own children, just being sure you know how to identify your emotions, and being
Mm-hmm.
able to know what does that mean, and then giving them those skills of being able to handle that. So the fact of schools wanting to pull that out for the sake of whatever reasons. So
Yeah.
a lot, again, like you said, a lot of states, to me, it's like, what's the reason? Why would you do that?
Right.
Like, why is it not okay to focus on a little chunk of, let's breathe for a little bit? Because I know as adults, we're all overwhelmed. Like, let's sit here and just
Mm-hmm.
take a quiet minute. Let's think
Yep.
about your behaviors. And, I don't want to get too deep into the waters, but I have my own feelings of why we are pulling those out, and why as a society that they don't want our children to be cognizant of their own behaviors. But I'm going to say that for another time. But definitely, I definitely, do feel as the adults in the room, if we're expecting our students to have self-regulation skills, self-management skills, we too have to be able to manage ourselves as people, as adults, and things like that. So one of your other posts was a video that talked about, you had somebody ask, like, I don't want to lose my crap in the classroom. Like,
Yeah.
what do I do when students are really giving me a hard
Mm-hmm.
time? And so you talked about breathing and some scenarios like that. So what, I guess, as we're talking about that now, what are some effective ways, or you could talk about the breathing if you'd like, to kind of keep yourself like calm, cool, and collected when kids are coming at you 20 at a time.
Right. It's honestly finding your breath, finding a way to remain calm, because again, they're watching you. If you lose it
Mm-hmm.
because you're angry, that's showing them that they can lose it when they're angry. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
want that. Like, we don't want that at all. And it's
Right.
okay to show your emotion too. As the teacher, there have been multiple times where I'm like, I am frustrated. I am not okay. I need a minute. Like, get your books, sit down. And I've done this with, second and fourth graders. And like, they can tell as well. They're aware. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
children are smart. They know
Mm-hmm.
when they've stepped over a
Yes.
line. And so if
Yes.
I hit that point and I'm just like, no, we're done. I need a minute. And I'm always big on like nature sounds and having nature in the background on the board when we're doing like independent work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, I
Yeah.
need 2 minutes. I need 2 minutes. You can read, you can sit, but you have to be quiet. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of it is I've built that relationship with my students. I've shown them that when they need that minute, I give it to them. They have it
Right.
anytime. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
because I show that respect first, I'm also given that in return.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes kids take advantage. There's a couple that will always be the goofballs and try
Yes.
to be the way they are. Um, but for the most part, I like the kids will take care of that themselves. They'll be like, stop, Miss Emily needs a minute. And you just take your time. And then afterwards, you address it. You say, I was really frustrated. It really helped me that you were able to stay
Mm-hmm.
quiet so I could get my breath. Um, so just like being honest, don't try to hide your frustration. Like, don't
Yeah.
act poorly on it. Um,
Right.
but there's a lot of different things you bring in. I'm trying to see if I have it here. I do. I'm reading. I don't know if it like flips it, but it's called Planting Seeds. It's all
Okay.
about mindfulness with children. I don't know if I'll say his name right, but Thich Nhat Hanh.
All right.
I know he died recently, like in the last year or two. But he is this huge, like, he is the person when you talk about mindfulness. And I'm going through this book and they have a bunch of different strategies and things. And I'm doing it so I can pull that into my module for mindfulness, which will be a part of the self-awareness course. But like, find your breath, practice a strategy. One thing I had in my classroom were just a bunch of different sensory things to help calm kids down, like maybe some blocks, some silly putty, pictures of nature, stuffed animals that they could hug, just a variety of things. And I would show them, like, I would practice with those as well to show them that, like, this is how you calm yourself down, because it's a learning opportunity, even in that frustration.
Yeah. And that's thank you. And so I'll link for those that are watching, I'll link a website for this. But yes, so that looks like a very great resource and tool to have. And I know you offer other resources through your website. You did share kind of like a cheat sheet on some quick classroom management skills, which is really cool. That's on your website. So you guys can go in and just type in your name and email and download that there. And so you talked about that you're doing, you want to speak on a little bit more on the modules that you're going to be offering and kind of what that will look like?
Yeah. So my hope is eventually to have a digital course for each of those 5 competencies you had shown earlier. But right now I'm focusing on self-awareness again, because I feel it's that foundation. And there are 5 kind of attributes that go with self-awareness: identifying and recognizing emotions, recognizing strengths, needs, and values, accurate self-perception, so how you see yourself, self-efficacy, which is a lot with growth mindset, and then mindfulness. And so each module is a different of those attributes, and I just go through and kind of share my experiences, share the research that I've done a lot of. I have so many books, it's ridiculous. But like, go through and just teach teachers a starting point, somewhere to get your foot in, because we don't have it. And most people don't know that if you bring social emotional learning into just your daily practices, like a check-in, how easy it is. You can use characters from Inside Out. You can use, in the elementary school, there's a series called A Little Spot Of, and they have like little spots of colors that are attributed to emotions. There's another thing like zones of regulation, which I have loved. And that could work for even older kids. Yeah. You can bring that in, and that can just be a part of your morning. Check in with yourself emotionally, like put your name in the folder that fits it. Like, you don't have to share it, but, check in with yourself. Just self-assessing how you feel you did during the lesson, giving yourself, having a rubric available for kids to be like, oh, I did my best work. I was okay. Or like, I struggled today. Like something simple like that. Those are all social emotional learning skills that you're embedding into your lessons and into your day. And I just don't think teachers see that that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And I definitely agree. Those are all great, really great resources. I'll try to link all of those for everybody. But
Sorry,
yeah, there's multiple. No, it's okay. It's great because I'm just, you kind of click like, oh yeah, I read those. I'm pretty sure I've seen this planting seeds one. I came across it before, and I was literally, if you guys kind of see me looking off, I'm looking at another screen behind my screen to reference some things. And so there's another book that I ran. It's something titled With the Adolescent Brain, and it really talks about some social emotional techniques to work in classroom management to work with high school students. And so very effective tool that was in there as well. I will definitely find that one and put that back in there. I'm like, dang, I know, I had it in the top of my brain. But yes, so definitely just taking the time to learn that. So to me, when I can understand like the little kids, like they're hard to manage. Middle
Mhm.
school, you kind of have a mix. My daughter's,
Terrifying.
oh my gosh, she's 11, about to go into middle school. I'm like, I
Oh,
cannot
wow.
believe this, but she's very mild mannered. She's very mature for her age, but again, with her, she struggles a little bit with her social emotional skills,
Mhm.
because, and she was just talking about this the other day, kids kind of pick at her a little bit and intentionally, because she starts crying when she gets
Mm.
frustrated.
Yeah.
And they know that about her, so they do it intentionally, right, to kind of get
Mhm.
her to do that. And so we kind of talk about those things, and how to, first you worry about, yourself, and how to kind of calm yourself, and also to
Mhm.
accept that is how your body handles emotions.
Yep.
It's nothing shameful because you're crying when you're angry. Would you rather her be crying, or rather her throwing fists somewhere
Yes.
because she's
Yes.
upset? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Mhm.
pick your battle. But just kind of helping her identify, me as her mother, identifying with their emotions. Like, it's okay to react in certain ways, right? Not every way is okay, but to be
Mhm.
able to give them those skills. And
Yes.
so I had talked about in our previous podcast, especially in elementary, you're around these kids all day, and they look to you for
Mhm.
things. So why are we not putting this in the classrooms, especially if you are a teacher who struggles year after year after year
Yes.
with classroom management? And sorry to say it, guys, but something you're doing is not working. And I'm going to be the one to say it, because it's not every student giving you the hard time. It's you as the adult in the room learning how to
Mhm.
manage the group of kids that you have in front of you, regardless of the grade. Um, building, obviously, relationships is super important with them.
Yep.
Let's see. So the other topic that I had read through your pages, and I really wanted to, um, I like laughed and kind of was like, oh, this is a cute one. But you talked about how students come back and say thank you because you made a difference in their lives, right? I
Mhm.
laughed because it had a funny like little guy like crying in the
Yeah.
video. Um, but that's the sentiment. So kind of what is your take on the combination of that, building relationships in combination with your classroom management style and that social emotional skills?
I It's also related. It's also connected. If you can build a relationship with that student, even when it's hard, they will take chances. They will try
Mm-hmm.
things they never did before. And you might learn something that that child has never told anybody. I'm going to go back on a tangent. In my very first year of teaching, uh, I had a boy, and he was my first challenge student. And
Mm-hmm.
we were working together. And, the whole time he was living with an aunt, and we had found he had undiagnosed ADHD, which was one of the things we were struggling with. We're in second
Mm-hmm.
grade, and he's reading at a beginning first grade reading level, and he's struggling, and he knows he's struggling. And it was so hard, and he'd get frustrated, and, you have to support them. And then one day he looked at me and he was like, Miss Emily, like, would you be sad if I died? And I,
Mm-hmm.
like, even now, it's still like, it makes my heart stop. I pulled him into the hall, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I would never be okay if you weren't here. I would never be
Yeah.
okay. And we're going to figure this out together. We're going to get through it together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think he would have shared that thought, that deep feeling with me if I didn't have the relationship. But from that moment on, it wasn't about academics. It was about
Yeah.
getting this child to love himself just a little bit, getting that child to see
Yeah.
the potential just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so for the rest of the year,
Mm-hmm.
that's all I did. And he stayed at the same reading level. He did not change.
Mm-hmm.
But by the end of the year, there was one day he wrote like a whole page of, I don't know what it was. It was in response to a book. I didn't read it, no idea what it was, but he was so excited. he wanted to show the principal all that he wrote. And I was like, go tell the principal. And he did. He went and he showed off his writing to the principal. And I was like, oh, Lord, I hope he didn't say anything weird on that paper. But he did. And he was so proud of himself and so excited. And so we got to the end of the year. He stayed the same, but he was just a very different person. And he grew 2 reading levels in the next, like when he was in 3rd grade.
Nice.
So
awesome.
That's why we have to address the student themselves, because that will hit the academics every time.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's just that simple. That's what it is. And I don't think every teacher experiences something on that level, because I too have experienced that at the high school. I think I mentioned this, I don't know, somewhere, but I went through a stage back in 2018. I was highly depressed. I almost lost my teaching job, and I ended up taking a 3 months off to focus on myself and things like that. And went to some therapies, all those things, and I ended up coming back into work. And the very first day I came back, a student reached out to me saying, I miss you, blah, 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 blah. Where have you been? Let's talk. So me and her are talking, and it kind of led in the conversation of her talking about committing suicide. And, as we are mandatory reporters, right? And she knew that, and I had to let her know. I'm like, hey, if we're going to continue this conversation, like, we're going to be talking to the counselor and to your parents about this. Is this, I just want to be clear, like, this is what's happening. Are you asking me for help and all of those things? And, had I not built that relationship with her prior to me being gone, maybe had I not gone through that situation and going to therapy myself and kind of recognizing a couple of things about the student through my experience, I may not have caught that, and we could be looking at something different. But, she reached back out to me a couple of months later, like, thank you so much, for helping me and for actually making me go get the help I needed and things like that. And it's just that simple. Like, all of us aren't going to have these types of conversations with students, but I do believe, you mentioned the pandemic, that post-pandemic, I think just emotions, the psychological effect on the different changes that has happened in the last few years really does play a big role, especially in the emotional stability of our children. One, because, possibly the home life isn't as well, and a lot of people are still kind of recouping and recovering from the pandemic. And, but this isn't the first time in the history of us as people that pandemics have happened. But again, it's because of how we are focused on education on the academic level. We cannot, again, if we're talking Maslow's hierarchy of need, if your basic needs are not met, you are not going to be able to focus on multiplication facts or comprehension for reading or chemistry or any of those things. The arts, yes, they'll be fine. They'll love that, do something fun because it's creative, right? It's using a different part of your brain versus that logical, and that logical thinking. So I definitely love all of these concepts. So my last question to you before we go for today, but definitely have to have you back on for another conversation because we've gotten to some great topics. What do you think is something, right now, if we could really focus on something that whoever you feel should be working on, what do you think is something that's either missing in education around these topics today, or what do you think needs to be kind of worked on a little bit better in order to improve things for our teachers and our students?
I think 2 things, but they're kind of the same. The first is let teachers teach. We are trained professionals. If we're asking for help, that's because there's something that's missing that we need, and we need to listen to that. If we're saying we got this, let us get it. Like, absolutely. And when we have conversations about policy and district expectations and things like that, listen to the teachers. Let them, and not just like the teachers that are on every committee and a part of everything. Go in and talk to all of the teachers, because not every teacher has the opportunity to voice their opinion or voice their thoughts. So get in there some way. And I think the other is we need admin and guardians to also listen to teachers, particularly when it comes to those behaviors that are extreme, because there is a problem in classrooms, like many classrooms in each school, where learning stops. So if you have 26 kids, one child can stop learning for all 26 kids. And if that is what's happening, the child needs to be removed. And it's admin and families need to come together and say, you know, I'm not going to let this one child stop the learning of 25 other people, and work with the teacher. I'm not saying that I have all the solutions, but like the minute a child becomes destructive and unsafe and violent, they cannot be, because then we're creating more trauma. So we've got to come up with some solution for these extreme behaviors that we're seeing everywhere. So yeah, I think those are the two really big things.
Okay, great. Yeah, and again, that just, it stems into so many things. And yes, so there's definitely techniques and stuff in working with students who are escalating to that level. But you make a valid point, and that's across any grade band. It's if it's that one constant student that's constantly doing something, and we can consider IEPs, we can consider all of those things, right? But something still has to be done in relation to getting that child support. What is triggering this child? What are things that we need to work on a little bit more? It does take the full team, but again, the parent has to be, or a guardian needs to be involved. Admin needs to listen, needs to be involved as much as they can. But no, like you said, we're not going to have the answers for every scenario. But I do, as you feel strongly, that really focusing on building those relationships with those students, being able to understand different social emotional learning techniques, however little or big you want to implement it, but basic structures, and as well as that classroom management. As you say, you have to know how to manage your classroom and read the room. And are these kids exhausted from standardized testing all week, and now you're trying to shift them into your next unit? Like, no, like they're kids, and we're people. And I do feel like we're in a heightened society, especially because of technology and all the things. And so let us take a minute and kind of sit back. Like, my eyes already hurt from this lovely ring light over here. I gotta make sure you guys see me. But you know, it's like something that simple, like, are we dimming the lights for us? So I definitely thank you so much, Emily, for joining me today. So for the followers and people that are watching, please make sure you go view her content, Not Your Ordinary Teacher, on Instagram. And she does have a website. Do you have other platforms, or was it just those two?
I'm just focusing on those right now. It's a lot of work.
Oh, that's great. I know, girl. I know. I'm like, just a little bit here. So those two for you. And then, of course, please like, follow, and share myself and Emily. And thank you so much, Emily. I'm definitely gonna have you back on. So followers, thank you. You guys all have a great night, and I will talk to you all soon.
Thank you so much.